Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all fighting fit and well. Look, I get asked a lot about what settings I use for my landscape photography and seascape photography, what settings I use and why I use them. In today's video, I'm going to explain to you what settings I use for my landscape and seascape photography that suits my style and my workflow. So first one is I always shoot in RAW. Now, in this day and age, I don't know why people shoot in JPEG. I just don't know, unless they're either an amateur just starting out, or they're not familiar or a bit frightened of the RAW process and process of editing. But so they shoot in JPEG. For me, I always shoot in RAW. If you're shooting just for Instagram and Facebook and social media, well then JPEG's fine. But for me, I need to extract all that information out of a RAW file or a RAW negative, because that's what it is, to get the best possible result that I can get with my images. So I always shoot in RAW. Next thing is settings, camera settings. Now, I shoot in manual and aperture priority. If the light is changing slowly in some areas, which it does, I'll shoot in manual because that'll give me time, well, I've got time to sort out all my settings and get it right in camera because the light's moving or the clouds are moving or the sky's not changing, so I shoot in manual. But there's times where you need to shoot in aperture priority when everything's happening very quickly, when the light's changing very quickly. Now, don't shy off using aperture priority. In other words, set your aperture, say f11, and let the camera work out the shutter speed. And if you're not getting the required shutter speed, well then you can move your ISO, or you can introduce filtration to the camera. So 9 times out of 10 I shoot in manual, but every now and again I do shoot in aperture priority. Next thing's white balance. I always shoot in daylight white balance. I don't change it unless I'm inside doing something which isn't really, obviously it's not landscape or seascape photography, or if I'm out in an area where I've got fluoro lights or something like that, well that's when I can move my white balance. But for my seascape and landscape photography, I always shoot in daylight with the daylight white balance setting. Next thing is metering, metering for the scene. Now, these modern cameras have all different types of metering programs in them. For me, I use evaluated metering, where the whole scene is being metered from left to right, top to bottom, corner to corner. I find that suits my work and my workflow, and I don't have any problems at all using evaluated metering when it comes to metering a scene. I just find it works so much better than all the others. Sometimes I'll use spot metering, but very rarely would I use that unless I'm really up close to a certain part in a landscape where I need to really just focus on that particular part of the landscape. But 99.9% of the time I'm shooting with evaluated metering. Camera settings, well basically I always focus in manual. I don't use autofocus. I don't think it suits the way I do things. I don't want the focus to start hunting for focus points in the image. With focus points, you can use 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I use one focus point. And with manual focus, using the live view screen, it's perfect for me. So I only use one focus point. I don't use all the other points that are available to us in our modern day cameras. But I do manual focus. Using the live screen. The live screen I think has been a revolutionary process when it comes to modern photography. Using the live screen and zooming in on the subject or the landscape and then manual focusing on that point, it just ensures that you're going to have everything in focus. So I shoot using the live view screen and I manual focus with single point focusing, and it works a treat. I don't have any problems at all using that particular or those particular settings with manual focus. Also with the live view screen, I tend to shoot for the histogram, not the image that I'm looking at. So I shoot for the histogram, not for the live view screen. Even though the histogram's on the live view screen, I always shoot for the histogram and not the live view screen. In other words, what's in front of me, because what you're looking at is a JPEG file. You're not looking at RAW, even though you could be shooting in RAW. You're looking at a JPEG file on the back of the camera. So I always shoot for the histogram, and I use the histogram quite a lot, whether I'm clipping highlights or losing it in the shadows. I think it's one of the tools that everybody should use or get to know how to use, and that's shooting for the histogram instead of what's actually on the back of the camera through the live view screen. So that's a histogram. Basically, ISO, I try and keep the ISO as low as possible, 100, or I might have to step it down to 50. 50 is okay, but with 100 you shouldn't get any noise. Well, in actual fact, you won't get any noise at 100 ISO. So I'm either shooting between 100 ISO or I drop it down to 50, which I can do on the Canons. Sometimes I might have to go to 200 or maybe 400, all depends on the light and what sort of end result that I'm trying to achieve. But basically my ISO settings is 100 or even lower to 50. Basically that's it. Settings, yeah, once again, F11. I usually shoot at F11, sometimes F8, sometimes F16. And in manual, I will sort out my shutter speed, but if I'm using aperture priority, well, I'll let the camera work out the shutter speed from there. And if I just don't get the required shutter speed, I will use a neutral density filter or even a circular polarizer, which will reduce it by 1 or possibly 2 stops of light. So that's it. They're the settings that I use. I don't use anything else. I try and keep things very, very simple so I can keep the workflow nice and smooth, where you're not worrying about settings or thinking, have I got this right or did I do that wrong? It all comes back to experience. I've been doing this for over 35 years, and I just know how to use the camera. If you can know how to use your camera, you're much better off that way. You won't make many mistakes, but you will benefit by trying those things that I've just suggested. Now, these settings that I've just mentioned to you is what suits me. It suits my workflow and my style of shooting. It mightn't suit you. You might do different things with your settings and your camera, but that's fine. But they're the questions I often get asked. What settings do I use and how do I do it? And so I just thought I'd let people know that's exactly how I shoot when I go out to the landscape or seascape areas. So that's it for another episode of Sniper Photography. If you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button and the bell next door so you don't miss anything. Any comments, please leave them down below and I'll certainly get back to you when I can. But as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, keep smiling, and bye for now.